Unit 4, linear and absolute value functions, question number 1. So question number 1 says $160 is invested in an account earning 5.9% interest APR, compounded continuously. Write a function showing the value of the account after t years, where the annual growth rate can be found from a constant in the function. Round all coefficients in the function to 4 decimal places. Also, determine the percentage of growth per year, APY, to the nearest hundredth of a percent. Okay, so when we're doing this, guys, the thing that pops out to you, or should pop out to you primarily, is the fact that it says it's compounded continuously. Whenever it's compounded continuously, you use the formula PE to the exponent RT. So in this case, that's the formula we're going to use for this question. PE to the exponent RT. So this is going to be the setup we're going to use. Where there's some number that represents P, E always will stay the same because E represents some numerical value, some number that represents your R, and then something that represents the T. But in this case, it says T is years, so T years. So it doesn't tell us how many years, so T would stay the same. Okay? So we need to identify what the P and the R represent. So in this case, or rather in all cases, the P represents the principal or the initial value. So the principal or the initial value is the amount that you start with. So my P will be equal to $160 because that will be the amount that we start with before we started to earn interest. Okay? The R represents your rate. Okay? So your rate is the amount that you would be changing by every time, or the amount we're earning. In this case, it says that we're earning 5.9%. But the thing about your rate is that your rate cannot be a percentage. It has to be a decimal. So to convert a percentage to a decimal, you divide it by 100. Because again, 5.9% is 5.9 out of 100. And that would be 0.059. So then finally, we try to identify the T. The T represents time. But it didn't tell us how many years. It just said T years. So the T stays the same. So I'm now going to go ahead and substitute my P. My P is 160. Then I substitute my R. My R is 0.059. And as I said, the T stays the same because it doesn't tell us how many years. Okay? So now we need to calculate what the E to this exponent represents. So we need to calculate what I'm going to put a box around. So I need to calculate that amount. So I'm going to put that in my calculator. So again, you type it in just like how you see it. So you type the letter E, and then to the exponent 0.059. So instead of writing 160 multiplied by this, I would do 160 multiplied by 1.0607, because the question says round it to 4 decimal places. So if I'm doing 4 decimal places, I look at the 5th number after the point. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th number is a 7. So the 7 is 5 or larger. So this 7 will actually round up to an 8. So instead of a 7 here, it will round up to be an 8. Okay? And then the T stays the same. And that would be my function. So now I need to evaluate whether it's a grow or a decay. So to evaluate whether it's a grow or decay, a grow, so grow or growth, means that your number that's in the parentheses is greater than 1. So it has to be greater than 1. Okay? Whenever it's a decay, that would mean it is less than 1. Okay? And that would be the number that's inside of the parentheses. Okay? So in this case, guys, this is a growth, because the number in the parentheses is greater than 1. So now I need to figure out how much it's growing by. So to figure that out, I'm going to do the amount that it grew by. So that 1.0608, and I'm going to subtract 1 from it, because we always say that we start at 1. So again, we subtract 1 from it. That will give me this decimal. But in this case, when you represent the growth, you're going to represent it as a percentage. So to convert this to a percentage, you do this number multiplied by 100. So it grew by 6.08%. So it was a growth by 6.08%. And that would be the answer. So again, to calculate this number, we did this number minus 1 multiplied by 100. Okay? So again, this we calculate to get the growth. We did 1.0608 minus 1 and then multiply that by 100. So that's how we got this. Okay? So let's try the next one. So the next one says $860 is invested in an account earning 9.4% interest APR, compounded quarterly. Write a function showing the value of the account after T years where the annual growth rate can be found from a constant in the function. Round all coefficients in the function to 4 decimal places. Also, determine the percentage of growth per year APY to the nearest hundredth of a percent. Okay? So in this case, we're gonna use what actually should pop out to you is the fact that it says it's compounded quarterly. It doesn't say continuously like this one. So whenever we're doing compounded quarterly, all right, or anything that's not continuous, you always use compound interest. So again, you use this formula whenever you're doing quarterly, daily, monthly, weekly. So again, anything of that sort that is not continuous, you use this formula. So this is the formula we're going to use. So I'm going to use the formula P multiplied by 1 plus R over N to the exponent NT. So we set it up like this where we have some number P parentheses 1 plus something that represents the rate over something that represents that N, and N is the number of times. Okay, and then to the exponent N, and in this case again it says T is the year, so that T stays the same because we don't know how many years. So we're going to identify the principal first because P is the principal, and that would be $860 because that's the amount that they invest before it started to earn interest. The R represents the rate that correlates with the percentage that they earned, and that would be 9.4, but that's a percent. And do we need a percent? No, we need a decimal. So to get a decimal, we divide this number by 100, and that will give me 0.094. Okay? Then we identify the N. So N represents the number of times. To figure that out, you focus on the fact that it says quarterly. Okay? So quarterly means that you're cutting it in quarters. So if you have one whole and you cut it in quarters, you're cutting it in sets of 4. Okay? So again, some notes you could write is that if you're doing quarterly, that's going to be cutting it in 4. If you're doing it daily, you're going to ask yourself how many days are in a year. So that's 365 days in a year. And if you're doing monthly, you're going to ask yourself how many months are in a year. And that would be 12 months. Okay. So again, those are the general things you could look at. So in this case, guys, I will substitute now my P. My P is 860. And then 1 plus R goes at the numerator. So that would be 0.094. And then my N goes at the denominator. That would be 4. And then my N goes here again, so I put a 4 right here again. Okay, so again right here is 0.094. I repeat, right here is 0.094. If you can't see clearly, I'm going to write it again. 0.094 if you can't see it clearly. Okay, so all I need to do now is calculate what I have in a box right here. So I calculate everything right here, including the exponent. So I'm going to plug all of that in my calculator. So my calculator, I would type 860 parentheses 1 plus, and then I make a fraction. So I make a fraction 0.094 over 4 multiplied by the exponent 4. Okay, so again, I type in exactly what I see right here in the box, and this would be what I would get. Oh, sorry guys, I shouldn't put the 860. I'm sorry, I should only put what's in the box and not the 860. So the 860 we can delete. So we can delete that. So this is what we would get. This right down here. Okay. So I would have 860. I write it again. Parentheses 1.0974, because the fifth number after the decimal point is so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a 6. That number is bigger than 5, so that means the 3 goes up by 1 point. Okay, so that's why the 3 went to a 4 and the t stays the same, and that would be my function. So now I need to identify if it's a growth or a decay. Well, whether it's a growth if the number in the parentheses is greater than 1. Because it's greater than 1, it would be a growth. So to find out how much it's growing by, I would do the number in the parentheses, 1.0974 minus 1, and then I need to convert it to a percentage by multiplying by 100. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I would do 1.0974 minus 1, and then multiply that, 1.094 or 974 minus 1, and then multiplied by 100, and I get 9.74. So it grew by 9.74. Okay, so again guys, just like that.